So
yeah, that's fine.
Give me 1 second.
All right, chat. We're about to be live here. Just we're setting up tech. We're waiting on Dragonfist. We're gonna kick this bad boy off here. We'll be good in a minute here.
Okay. But yeah. Well, I am ready to start when you guys are. So
yeah, I'm just trying to get my thing live.
Okay.
1 second. Mm-hmm. Yep. Good.
Riveting content, gang. Hey, thanks for showing up to my chat. Really appreciate you. It's going to be an interesting conversation, I hope. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, I think we're good to go here.
Okay. Well.
All right, let's kick it off. All right, so today we are here to debate. American Christians would benefit more from Democratic leaders than Republican. I guess the affirmative is Wick. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so you're gonna start us off, kick it off, and Dragonfish, you respond from there, and then he'll get the last closing, and you get the first. And let's do this.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Time.
I gotta move over. I wrote up an opening statement. It's very brief. Okay. I'm reminded of a question asked of Christ in Scripture. A man comes to him and asks, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Simple enough question, which Christ answers pretty handily. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind. But Christ doesn't stop there. He continues, and he adds this. The second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and prophets. The debate prompt tonight is, would American Christians benefit more from Democratic leaders than Republicans? And to answer that question, we must consider the answer to this one. Which political coalition better enables and expresses love of God through love of neighbor? Doing these things, after all, would be the greatest benefit, not just to our bodies, but to our souls. Democratic leadership, imperfect as it obviously is, wins the day, and it's not close. That's my argument tonight. When it comes to healthcare, to immigration, to poverty, to corruption, to freedom, the list goes on. Too often in American politics, it reduces Christianity to a handful of cultural battles. Which books are in schools? Which commandments hang on courthouse walls? Trans issues, DEI. Which politician says the word God most often? But Christ gave us a considerably harder test because our neighbor is not some abstract theological concept. Our neighbor is a child whose parents cannot afford a doctor. The family choosing between food and rent. The stranger arriving frightened and alone at our borders. The prisoner who still possesses human dignity. Even the political opponent who we are commanded to love rather than hate. It was not a suggestion when Christ commanded us to feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty, to take in the stranger, to clothe the naked, and to visit the ill and imprisoned in their extremity. As said in Matthew by the great exemplar himself, for even as ye have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Christianity is not measured by how prominently we display Christ's name or how often we invoke it. It is measured by whether we obey what Christ actually commanded us to do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Dragonfish, go ahead.
Okay, thank you guys. To answer whether American Christians benefit more from Democratic or Republican leadership, we have to first establish a fundamental standard. What actually constitutes a benefit to a Christian? For the Christian, as understood through historical Catholic tradition and mirrored in the Orthodox understanding of theosis or deification in Catholicism, our ultimate goal is salvation, sanctification, and union with God. A political outcome is only a true benefit if it aligns with the divine truth and aids in our spiritual calling. If a policy or platform moves us further from God, no earthly promises of government utility can compensate for that. And this brings us to the fundamental divide in epistemology, how the two parties view reality itself. The American conservative right grounds its worldview in objective, transcendent reality, viewing the world as God created it, bounded by moral laws and absolute truth. The modern left operates under a subjective epistemology, viewing reality not as it is, but as they believe it should be constructed, detached from divine order. A party fundamentally confused about the nature of truth cannot lead Christians towards ultimate truth. And nowhere is this ideological rift clearer than on key moral issues. So if we look at the right to life, protecting the unborn is not merely a political position. It's a foundational Christian command to protect the most vulnerable, similar to what Wick was citing. The Democratic Party platform actively champions abortion access as a core mandate. A party advancing policies directly antithetical to the sanctity of life cannot logically benefit the Christian soul. Then we have senators, such as Texas Senator Phil King, who has fought to reintroduce foundational Christian heritage into public classrooms, including daily prayer and the display of the Ten Commandments. Meanwhile, Democratic lawmakers and civil groups actively litigate to erase every trace of Christian teaching from public education. How can removing God from our children's institutions possibly benefit Christian families? My opponent will likely point to foreign policy flaws, neocons, or individual rogue politicians to critique the right while attempting to highlight a few moderate Democrats. This is a non-starter. We're comparing party platforms and structural worldviews, not individual outliers. And finally, my opponent will probably cite the Imago Dei, our responsibility to care for others, at which he did pretty much, and claim democratic social welfare programs fulfill this mandate. But this reflects a deep misunderstanding of Christian stewardship. Giving money to the federal government under legal compulsion is not charity. This is compulsory taxation. True Christian charity is voluntary. It's an intentional act of personal sacrifice. That's what builds the virtue. Expanding government entitlement programs does not make a nation more righteous. It just shifts personal Christian duty onto bureaucratic apparatus. And it actually hinders our ability to give to charity. So when we evaluate leadership by its internal impact on the soul rather than worldly convenience, the choice is clear. Christians cannot achieve spiritual alignment or true benefit under a party actively opposing Christian moral reality. Thank you.
All right, boys. Y'all know how it usually works. Fight.
Sure. I guess there's a lot to unpack there. I agree with you. Christians cannot achieve, right? Like it's much harder for Christians to become more like Christ, more Christ-like, and to follow his lead, to, as the scriptures say, come to know God and his son, whom he sent, with a party that has basically turned Christianity into merchandise. That I agree with. So I want to start by talking. Sorry,
It's fine.
went down the wrong pipe.
Go ahead.
I-
You can continue.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to clarify what we meant by benefit, so we're not talking past each other, but you could start if you have a question. I just don't want to be talking about two different things.
Well,
if you could explain what you mean by a benefit
Sure.
to Christians, as
Okay,
you know,
I think I covered it in my opening, but I'll say it again. So let me just. Which political coalition better enables and expresses love of God through love of neighbor? I think when it comes to benefits, it helps us grow closer to Christ. Do you agree? If we follow the teachings of Christ, if we are more loving towards our neighbor, if we are more loving towards God, that would benefit us?
Yes, but it's not the highest benefit. So, like, if you look at Catholic catechism on the Ten Commandments, they're in order for a reason, right? You even talked about it. The first is the love of God. Then, there's a hierarchy.
And
of
what's the second?
It would be love of your family, and then
no,
your neighbor.
That's not
would
what he
be
said.
next.
Hold on.
Yeah, you have to look
Christ-
at the writings
Christ
in the
was pretty
Catechism of
clear
Aquinas. This is the hierarchy
to love thy
of
neighbor.
Catholic
Okay, I'm not talking about Catholicism. I'm talking about the words of Christ.
mainstream
So he
Christianity.
again, I'll quote it again: to love God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength,
Mhm.
and to love thy neighbor as thyself. Not the family, right? Not some like not your brother, not your sister, not your father, not your mother, your neighbor.
I think you're muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Did you hear me before?
I only heard up to love your neighbor.
Oh yeah. Yes. That was the great commandment. Not love your mother, not love your father, not love your son, not love your sister, not love your daughter, not love your cousin, to love your neighbor. That's what he said.
Sure.
This is
Absolutely.
second great of commandment. And these two are load-bearing commandments.
Long style.
All the laws, every single one, and all the prophets and what they prophesied and what they taught, hang on these two things. So when we say love of family, that's just not true. In fact, Christ says, he doesn't I'm trying to get this right. Don't even the publicans greet those who greet them? Doesn't even wicked people love their sons and daughters? No, when he's talking about love, he's very clear. It's not an abstract theological concept. He says, love your neighbor as yourself.
I say there is a definitive hierarchy. So this is why I'm saying we have to get to what is the benefit for Christians, right? So like when you're formulating your argument from your position, who ultimately gets to decide what counts as a benefit to the Christians? That's where we kind of need to start, right?
Like who ultimately gets to decide?
Like what is the benefit to Christians that you're offering?
Sure. I think that in order to find out which benefit or what benefits Christians, we should look to the words of Christ. I think that's a pretty good starting space, right?
Not necessarily, because from your own worldview, shouldn't people get to choose for themselves what the benefit is and who best represents them from your position?
Hold on,
people get to make that decision for themselves, right?
No, people don't get to choose what benefits them. I can't say, I would love to drink this Coke and get it to benefit me. No,
people get to choose which party they think benefits them, right? Christians under your personal choice is very important to you, I'm sure. Individual rights, so they should be able to make that choice for themselves. I'm just trying to understand your position. Is that correct or no?
No, you fundamentally misunderstand. I believe in people's free will, their ability to choose what actions they take, what thoughts they choose to entertain, all these things. People don't get to choose the consequences of their actions. That just does not happen. I can go and jump off a cliff, but I don't get to choose what happens when I do that. The
You're not
choice
understanding the
is
question.
made for them.
Should people be able to choose for themselves who best represents their own interest in your worldview?
I think that they can choose who should represent them, but when it comes to who actually represents their best interest, they don't get to decide that. There's just an objective reality there that we have to actually deal with. Do you disagree?
But from your worldview, I think individual choice is very important. Either
It
way,
is.
they should get to choose for themselves. That's all I'm trying to establish. Do they get to choose for
Let me ask
themselves
you
or
this.
Yes,
not
people
under your
obviously
world?
get
I think
to
this
choose.
might help. Do you agree with what Rick is saying, Dragonfist, that there is an objective reality? Like there's something that is always good, always bad.
Yes. And so, in that objective reality, is it good to have personal autonomy and be able to decide which party you want to represent you? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Of course that is, but that doesn't
Okay,
mean
so
the
wait,
result
just
of
let
who
me
you
follow
choose.
up. Fine. So if we look at the landscape today, roughly 74 to I think it's 82% of conservative Republicans identify as Christian. That's I think Pew Research. So on your worldview, these people should be able to decide for themselves who best represents them, as you just said.
They get to decide who they want to represent them.
Right.
That does
Now we
not
can get
mean that
into what the
hold on,
benefit
hold on,
actually
this is
is.
really important.
Yeah.
That does not mean that their decision is correct. So, for example, I can decide that the person who best represents me is, I don't know, Trump, but objectively, that is not true based on what my goals are, what I guess the results of me choosing that would be. Like we can think that this choice leads to the best outcomes, but whether it does or not is separate from that. Do we understand?
Yeah, and that's why I was trying to get
Yeah.
at what is the benefit to Christians individually? What is the benefit? That's why I was pointing to something that Catholics would call deification or Orthodox would call theosis. This would be a benefit to them. And again, when you cite things
Come closer to God, right? That's the
to come closer to God, right?
yes,
And so,
that-
so when
that
we're
makes sense.
evaluating that, if you look at current policy actions that Democrat leaders are pushing, for example, if we look at Massachusetts Governor Maura Haley, she just signed legislation eliminating limits on abortion up to the moment of birth. So, no matter anything else that you say, you cannot claim a platform benefits Christians when its foundational policy directly violates the sanctity of life. That's why this argument fails from the start, Wick. You can't do it. There's nothing that's going to top that.
You cannot use every unborn child to make your neighbor invisible. You can't say, oh, abortion is all of Christianity and we have to stop there. Do you know, has the abortion rate gone up or down since President Trump got into office? What do you
We're
think?
not using I have no idea, so we'd have to
It's
pull
gone
up
up.
the
It's
stats.
gone up, to be clear. Did
Fine, but
abortions
that
go
has
up or
nothing to
down?
do
Well,
with the
this is
Why has
argument.
it gone
important.
up, though?
Did
Why has it
abortions
gone
go
up?
up or down? Because look, this is a
Yeah, it's not
problem. A
relevant.
fundamental problem I have with y'all's position is you just want to say you oppose abortion, but you don't want to take the actions that actually lower abortion, because we know what does that: prenatal care, access to food and medicine for the mother and their family, access to healthcare. These all things encourage women to keep their children, right? So when you say this, Lord, I hate abortion, but then you take actions that make abortions more likely, I just don't believe you. You shall know them by their fruits. And the fruits of Republican and especially MAGA has been more abortions, man.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You shall know them by their fruits. That's why I'm citing specific, I know you love policy, a specific policy that this only exists on one side. This isn't like a bi-party thing. Only one side advocates for abortion as as a core tenet of their platform. And you know it's true.
It's healthcare. Hold on. It's health care for the mother. That's what we advocate.
Whatever you want to call it, that's fine. But like you said, we will know them by their fruits, and this is pretty obvious. That's why I say also by their fruit. 82% of conservatives are like, I don't even know why you wanted this prompt. It's a weird prompt. I'm just surprised that you offered it. Like, there's just no way to argue that Democrats offer any type of, like, is the benefit specifically to Christians, or is it just an overall benefit that you think for all people it's better?
I think Christianity and being Christ-like benefits everyone, yes. But I think especially if you want to do the things that Christ has commanded you to do, it is better, again, not perfect. Thank you, Destiny, for the raid, by the way. It is better, again, but not perfect. I'm not saying either party is perfect at this. It's simply better for the Democrats. I think a good example of this kind of concept that I'm talking about is I want to talk about MAGA for a little bit, right? Because these are the options at the table. We have the Republicans who are MAGA now, and we have the Democrats. MAGA writes books on what they call suicidal empathy or toxic empathy. Elon Musk has said, like, one of the greatest weaknesses of Western civilization is its mercy. And that is fundamentally antithetical to what Christ taught. Again, Christ didn't stutter. He said, when they are hungry, feed them.
Yeah.
When they are a stranger, take them in. When they are sick, visit them, tend to their needs. These are all things that he commanded. And just because charity exists, and yes, I have a personal responsibility to engage in Christian charity, that's just true. Just because that exists, it does not give us carte blanche for the government to do nothing. We've been commanded to advocate for the poor and their rights, right? This is scriptural. I don't know why.
I mean, we give
why you keep
67% of our income that we take in from tax revenue to entitlement programs, and Trump's president. So I don't think that's the most in the world. So I don't think we're like behind on that either way. I think either party is doing their best. So it just comes down to how, again, just like the benefit thing, how do we take care of these people? How do we do it? But then if you look at parties that are like fundamentally, if we look at the two parties, one is trying to stop Christians. So if we look under the Biden administration, right? Under the Biden administration, Christians, pro-life activists were actively prosecuted under I think it was called the Federal Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act for simply praying, singing hymns, standing outside abortion clinics. So you're arresting Christians. You cannot be the benefit to Christians when you're trying to stop them from praying outside an abortion. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
They weren't just praying outside these abortion clinics. That's not all they were doing. They were physically obstructing and blocking women from being able to access the healthcare that they chose. Like, to frame this as they were stopped.
I don't think so. If you look at Paul Vaughn, he was participating in a peaceful prayer gathering outside a Tennessee clinic, Paul Vaughn, and they raided his house. So I don't think that's true. I think that this is a systematic attack on Christianity. Same thing like I brought up with the wanting it out of schools. Do you think that we should have the 10 commandments in schools, Wick, and prayer in schools?
Okay.
Did
God command us to put up commandments in schools? No. Again, in my opening, you are doing this thing where you're reducing Christianity to a culture war issue. God has commanded us to care for the poor and the needy, to visit the sick and afflicted, to welcome the stranger, to love thy neighbor. And again, Trump just does not do that, and neither does the Republican Party. I think a good comparison is Paxton versus Tallarico. Tallarico is a deeply Christian man. Whether you agree with all his positions or not, he's clearly a deeply, genuinely Christian man who tries his best to live the gospel as he understands it. Paxton spent the 4th of July with his mistress in England. Which do you think represents, or which do you think is a better example of Christianity? Which one? If you had to,
I already answered this. No, when we're evaluating which political platform benefits Christians, we're not going to look at isolated bad actors. We're going to look at the core party platforms. So nothing any rogue Republican lawmaker has done compares to the legal institutionalization, of ending millions of innocent lives. It just doesn't compare.
You mean like getting rid of USA?
Yeah, it doesn't compare.
You mean like getting rid of USAID when we talk about?
I mean that, yeah. I mean, just like you brought up the border, yes, it does. 60 million babies do not compare to military age men running across our border. No comparison. Christians
hold
will
on.
choose
Let
the
me check
babies
the scriptures.
every
I didn't know there
time.
was an exception
Sorry,
for military
Christians are
aged
going to
men
choose
when
the
it
innocent
called
babies
about
every
taking
time.
in the stranger.
And
I
that's
didn't
why
know
you
that was exception.
fundamentally don't understand what the benefit to Christianity is. That's go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah, like I didn't see an exception in the scriptures for military aged men and whether we should care for the stranger or accept the stranger. I didn't see that exception there.
Right, but when you're
And when we
faced
talk
with
about
a
abortion,
question,
again, when we talk about abortion, I am not again trying to hand wave away that it's a deeply moral issue. But here's the deal, right? Access to healthcare is important, not just for the unborn, but for the born. And you cannot use the unborn to excuse the mistreatment of the born. There is only one party that is trying to expand access to healthcare for families, for children. There's only one party who's actually doing what we know reduces abortion rates. Under Obama, abortion reduced by 25%. 25% less. And you laugh, but this is the thing.
Are you
don't
trying to
actually
make the
care about
argument that
stopping abortion. You just want to virtue signal on it.
no, are you trying to make the argument that the left wants to get rid of abortions more than the right?
I am making the
Is that
argument
the argument? Just
the
because
left is
some
making
statistical
actions that actually reduce abortion.
Okay.
Yes.
Fine. Okay, fine. So let's look at another issue. Since clearly no one is going to agree with you on that, it's their core party platform. It's one of their main tenets. The right always actively opposes this. So it's not just words; it's the policies that they put forward.
No,
I
it
cited
is
you the
just
law.
words.
I cited you the Massachusetts governor that just signed it. Like if she didn't just do that, maybe you'd have she just did it. She just signed a bill that allows abortion up till the moment of birth. Up until the moment of birth. So Christians are not going to side with that party under any circumstances. And it's not just that. I'll show you from your own worldview, Wick, from the left's worldview, one of your core principles is protecting marginalized groups, right? So their voices
They're
can be
protecting
heard.
people.
But specifically,
Everyone.
marginalized groups need to be protected so their voices can be heard, right? So do you agree with that principle or no?
I mean, in general, yeah.
Okay, in general, you agree with it. This is pretty common in modern Democrats. If these groups receive special protection so they can express themselves freely, let's say like a pride parade, right? What happens under your worldview when when Christian moral convictions directly conflict with those expressions? For instance, if Christians oppose a public pride parade because Christianity strictly views pride as a sin, obviously, promoting values defined as sinful is not beneficial to Christians. So in that situation, who do Democratic leaders side with, Wick? Be honest. Who are they going to side with? Are they going to tell the LGBT community, sorry, no more public parades?
Do you think that
Can you
there
answer the
is
question?
any legislation on the table that are going to force Christians to participate in pride parades?
No, I'm asking what happens if Christians, you say that your party offers a benefit to Christians.
Yes.
So if Christians come out and say, we don't want to promote this on the street as a public parade, who do you side with? Just be honest. You know the answer. Everybody knows the
I'm
answer.
going to allow freedom of speech, even for
Right.
people I don't like.
You're
But
going to
this is
side against
this
the
is a
Christians.
fundamentally Christian principle, right?
You're going to side against the
idea that
Christians.
you
Once
allow
again,
people who
proving
disagree with you to speak.
that you're not the party that's going to benefit Christians. It's only what you think should be a benefit to Christians, not what the Christians think is a benefit to them. And that's the fundamental flaw in your argument.
Hold on. You understand that I'm citing the words of Christ here, and you're citing
I
what
understand that, but it's a
modern
reductive
Republicans
position.
think Christianity is. I'll posit to you that your version of Christianity, quote unquote, is not actually Christianity. I think that it has been hollowed out and skinned and worn as a suit by evangelicals, quote unquote, who parade themselves as Christian by not following the words of Christ at all. There are many who will say, Lord, Lord, have I not prophesied in your name, who will be rejected at the end times, right? They'll be told to, I never knew ye, depart from me, you worker of iniquity, right? And this is what I'm trying to say. Trump has fundamentally, in Trumpism, right? Not just him. It's been a whole issue for a long, long time, even before him. They've made Christ into a commodity, right? They've fundamentally altered what it means to be Christian. And we can see this in this debate. When I quoted the first two commandments, the greatest commandments, right? To love the Lord thy God and love thy neighbor as thyself. You were like, no, to love your family. No, that's not
No,
what
I'm saying there's a hierarchy of priorities. That's what I'm saying. That is in the Christian Catechism. You can read about it. Aquinas writes about it. Several church fathers write about it.
Okay.
So what I'm saying to you, and same thing with the right
the church
to life.
fathers.
Same
No.
thing.
The
If we're going to
church
look at
fathers, I
unborn
don't give a
innocent
shit what your
children,
church
all right, you've
says.
been going on and on, Wick. I'm trying to explain it to you. If we're going to look at unborn innocent children, there's a hierarchy of priorities, and those that can't defend themselves are going to be at the top of that list. Does that make sense to you?
I think that again, they don't stop being unable to defend themselves after they're born. And after they're born,
make sure they're born,
fundamentally, there is only one party who's trying to care for these people.
Oh, there's one party that says and again, if you force taxation, compulsory taxation, that's not Christian charity. So once again, you're misunderstanding what Christian charity actually is. If you stopped doing that, maybe Christians could take it on themselves to help in the way that they thought appropriate, which would then benefit Christians more. But you won't allow them to do that. You think you have to do it for them, which is indicative of this entire debate. It's indicative of what you're doing right now, telling Christians what the benefit is for them. Even more than 82% of them know for themselves. Wick knows better what the benefit is, and it's to side with the abortion party. Okay, did I properly sum up your?
That's great talking points. Proverbs.
That's what you said.
8-9 says this: "Open thy mouth, plead the cause of the poor and the needy." Isaiah 10, 1 verses 1 and 2 says this: those that decree unrighteous decrees, to turn aside the needy from the judgment, right? To the needy from judgment. Psalm 72 praises the righteous ruler. He shall deliver the needy when he crieth, the poor also, and him that hath no helper. These are scriptures where they're not talking to you or I. They're talking to rulers, to governments, to kings, to princes, to the principalities of the world, and saying, yes, not only do individuals have a responsibility to care for the poor, but governments do as well. No, the government having an ambulance system that is effective does not make the Good Samaritan any less good, because the road to Jericho also has an ambulance service. It
actually does. If you tax all their money away, then they're less able to give.
No one's taxing all your money away, brother.
Well, there's a shit ton of tax, Wick. You wake up in the morning, you turn your lights on, you're getting taxed. You pour your coffee that you paid taxes on into your cup that you paid taxes on. Before you get your check, they take taxes out. You pay property tax just to live in your property. How much money is left actually after all that? Not much. So they do tax you a lot. First, it definitely stops the amount that you can give on your own to charity. 100%. I experienced this myself. Of course, after, huh?
Oh, sorry. No, continue, please. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. So again, my point, and if we look at even the scriptures that you're citing, right? You yourself would be opposed to teaching those scriptures in school, right? Which party would actually want to teach that in schools?
Why do you
things that you are citing
it in school?
Which party would actually want to teach that in schools? The things that you're reading as, these great needs for society. Which party?
Not the Republicans. Do you think that this is what they're teaching in schools? No, they are not. They're teaching about how the dinosaurs the dinosaurs lived with man, and the Earth was flat and all that shit, or the New Earth theory, which is Earth is only 7,000 years old. When they're
trying to get the Ten Commandments back. They're trying to get the Ten Commandments in. They're trying to get prayer back in schools. Which party is doing that? Which party is promoting the Christian message, and which party is trying to keep it out? You're trying to do it right now, in this very moment.
No one stopped me from praying in school. I grew up in the 90s, man. I went to school in the 80s and the 90s. School-led prayer was banned. But no one stopped you if you prayed in school, because that was never the issue. That wasn't my question. The issue is when you have the government, which public education is an arm of the government, leading a religious service. Would you like it if Dearborn, Michigan forced all of its students to engage in Muslim prayer to Mecca 5 times during the class day?
What does that have to do with the prompt? It has nothing to do with the prompt. Of course
Because
not.
a
The prompt is
government's
what's the
strong
benefit.
enough.
I mean, I bet you would like it, thus also proving that Christians
Why would I like
don't
that?
benefit from your party.
I don't think
even now there was
the
just
government should be mandating religion, because I don't want it to
right.
mandate.
So then, which
Even though I
party
might
does
agree
this
with
particular
Christianity,
religion
I
benefit
don't want
more
the
from,
government
Wick?
to mandate that.
Right. That's the Democratic position. So which party does Christians actually benefit from more, Wick? The one that wants to promote their message or the one that wants to keep it out of education? Which one?
The one that wants to make the
You know the
journey
answer.
to Christ something that is personal and not mandated by the government. Because what you're doing is you're making a whore of the church. You're saying, I'm going to turn this into a political issue in order to get clout, to gain followers, to get elected. And you should not be doing that. What you should be doing is encouraging and allowing everyone to make the choice for themselves without daddy government coming in and forcing you to
Like the
choose
82%
a
of
religion
Christians
or
that identify
participate
as
in religious
conservative.
practice.
Like the
Religion
82%,
should
like
be,
the
the journey to God
82%,
should be
like the
deeply
82%
personal.
of conservatives that identify as Christians, they can make their own choice.
Yes, they've always been able to make their own
Okay,
choice.
so I think they've decided which party benefits their morals and values better.
And yet Christianity is continually today struggling, being corrupted. We have less Christians than ever before. How's their choice going for them? How's it working out?
Say that one more time. I didn't hear what you said.
God damn it, your audio, man. I'm getting these bangers out and you just don't hear them.
I'm sorry that, what'd you say?
Fine. I'm saying that we have less Christians today than ever before. We are seeing Christianity in America be corrupted, used, and whored out. We are
Do you know what
seeing
percentage
all
of
these things
adults?
happen to Christianity. So if your argument is that these Republicans have chosen their leadership, yeah, they have. And look at the fruit.
Do you know, you said we
Taste
have less
that
Christians
shit.
than ever before. Do you know what percentage of adults right now identify as Christian in America?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, it's 2/3. So I think we're doing pretty well. Can I
Hold
ask
on,
you a
how many of
question?
them are
Why
actually
would it be,
Christian?
but I want to get one thing before I forget. Why would it be a problem specifically on the charity thing to lower taxes and let Christians decide to be charitable or not on their own?
You should do
Why is
that
that a
too.
problem exactly?
You can do that too, but that does not, again,
No, I said to
come at this-
lower taxes and allow them to do that instead of the government doing it.
Hold on. The government is able to engage in charity that private organizations simply cannot, right? It can withstand a lot of turmoil, political and economic, that private industry cannot. It is able to act in ways that the public is just not able. It just does not have access to those resources, to that institutional backbone. And again, once again, and I got to repeat this, just because we are commanded personally to be charitable does not absolve a government from their responsibility and, dare I say, the command from God to care for their poor and needy.
Okay. So can you give an an example of one of these things that only the government can?
The USAID.
Only the
USAID was
government can do
able.
that. There's not an international network of churches that can give to charity.
They can. It's not
Okay.
as effective.
Why? I think it would be more effective.
As I said, we have governments have access to resources and access to influence, power, and access to countries that individual charitable churches or organizations may not. And while an individual charitable church or organization might go under or might be subject to the whims of economic turmoil, governments are much more resilient to that kind of thing when it comes to charitable giving, right? When it comes to actually helping these people. And it just, again,
Yes, governments are
churches
known
don't have
for their
access to
resourcefulness.
the scientists. They don't have to help cure malaria, right? They don't have access to these things, but the government does. And look, it's not an either or, both. It's both, baby, right? We should, and can do both of these things. We can encourage private individuals to give, right? And be charitable. And when they see someone in need, to actually help them. And we can
Again,
also
you're not
say,
asking
hey,
answering
we
my.
should also advocate
Well-
that that a family doesn't have to choose between getting food for their children and paying the rent.
I want you to answer a question.
Hold on one second, Gibbs. You didn't actually contend with my point, which is I said to you there's an international there's a group of churches internationally that we could easily give this charity through. You agreed and then just said, yeah, but it's not as efficient. You didn't cite any way why that's the case, why it's not more efficient. You just stated it as a fact and brushed over it. Like, I don't think, and Christians don't think, that it's more efficient. I don't even think you think that it's more efficient to give to the government. That was a ridiculous point. I can't let you smuggle it in there. So unless you can provide proof that it's more efficient for Christians to give to charity through the government than it is their own churches, then I think you have to concede at least that point.
Hold on. No, I don't. Which church? Be specific.
I'm talking about the Catholic Church, but there's an international, like, Christians in general, there's an international community of Christians. Much that would be, I think, even easier to operate, to get charitable funds where they want it to be than going through the government, don't you?
But the Catholic Church,
how are you going to reroute? Huh?
The Catholic Church goes through governments. It works with governments. Why would they do that?
Why do we need the government as Christians? If we want to give to the causes that we care about, why do we need the government?
The government enables access to a lot of resources. Like, why do you think
that demonstrable, or are you just saying it?
Well, let me just ask you. Why do you think people like David French in the 90s went to the Supreme Court to argue that the government should allow charitable Christian organizations to receive government grants, funding, etc., so that they could do the work of helping the poor in Africa, helping the poor in China and these various other countries? Why do you think they did that if the government doesn't have a lot of access to resources?
It's possible. That's not even my specific, what my qualm is with what you're saying. The problem is they're going to end up using Christian taxes on non-Christian causes, right? So, like, wouldn't Christians be able to give to causes they consider moral? Why would the government use their taxes? Like, what if the government uses their taxes for, like, gay weddings and condoms? Why is it better to allow them to give? Why isn't it better to allow them to give where they want? Why isn't that better? You haven't demonstrated that yet.
So, well, first of all, do you believe that less abortions is better than more abortions?
Clearly, or have you been paying attention?
Then money for condoms is really good for Christian values.
Can I ask a question? Because you've made this argument twice now, and I'm just a little curious.
Sure.
I'm surprised that Dragonfist hasn't made this argument, but I think he's kind of hit around it. Would you argue, like, how would you, like, say hypothetically, the Republicans put out a policy in most of their states that's like, okay, we're getting rid of abortions, right? Wouldn't the argument be that, like, the Dems are going to encourage abortions as like a response to, like, kind of piss them off? I've seen pundits say that before. I mean, maybe some of them are crazy, but, like, would you not argue that's a tactic and that some are going to use to go, oh, Republicans caused it to go up? Like, was that not something you're concerned about in your scenario?
Sure, I think, look, I can't and I won't defend every statement by every politician or even every influencer on my quote-unquote side. I won't do that. Some of them have said crazy shit that I disagree with, and I think is very unchristian, right? That's just true. But when we look at, like, what is the overall effect of the policies that each party is not only advocating for, but implementing, we have data on this. We can see during, again, the Obama years, abortions actually went down. Why? Because of the expansion of the ACA, among other things, and among other policies that allowed women to get access to healthcare, which they felt that they could keep their baby and be financially viable and have their needs met and not go broke, right? And it encouraged women to keep their child, right? When Republicans got in, Trump, that number started rising a little bit, right? It plateaued, right? The decreases that were going on plateaued for a little bit, and it started increasing, right? Then Roe v. Wade got turned over, and then Trump came into office, and it's back on a slight incline for now, right? It's not huge, but it's not declining like it was under Obama. And again, when you have economic uncertainty, when you have all this chaos in the world, it doesn't encourage women to, and when women are worried that they will lose access to the health care that they need to not only have a baby, but to, again, after they have the baby, get their needs met and taken care of. They're just it's gonna encourage them to get rid of the baby, unfortunately.
Again, only one platform. This is what I mean. You want to take our tax dollars and fund things like abortion. You haven't answered this yet. You just pivoted away from it. Like, why shouldn't Christians be able to do this themselves? If you're saying your party is going to benefit Christians more, wouldn't it benefit them more to give them these individual choices? Why should Christians have to pay for the government funds abortions? Why should Christians have to pay for that? Why should they have to pay for public schools where they teach what Christians consider to be degeneracy? Why should we have to pay that in compulsory tax when we could be using that money to give to charity to actually have a benefit to our Christian values and beliefs, to bring us closer to deification or theosis? That's the actual goal. And which party allows us to do that, Wick? Honestly, you talked about the policies I already brought up. Under the Biden administration, they're arresting people for praying outside abortion clinics. Who are they?
Not why they were arresting them. They're arresting them because they were obstructing access, which is against the law.
Cited the guy, Voight. He was peacefully protesting. They raided his house.
He said it. Oh, he said it. Okay. He would never lie, right? Or
this is not one thing. I'm listing multiple things that Christians don't want to pay for that you have no response to. You're just like, yeah, well, it would be better if the left did it because Wick says so. That's why I'm asking you, what is like the objective measure for what the benefit to Christians is? What is the benefit to Christians? I'm not talking about the benefit to the people that we're supposed to care for or take care. Like, what is the benefit that you're offering to Christians? And why should we pay for things that are antithetical to our values by voting Democrat? Why should we do that?
I think that when Christ was asked a similar question, should we pay taxes? Do you know what he said?
Yeah, he said, give to Caesar what's Caesar's.
Yeah, it's not really, his kingdom is not of the world. He's not really worried about different tax policies and things like that, right? What he is worried about, and what he does ask us to do, is to advocate for the poor and needy, that our tax dollars do go to these things. Now, you might claim that these things are quote unquote.
He doesn't say give your tax money to Caesar in exactly that reference. He doesn't say give your tax money to Caesar so that Caesar can take care of the poor. He tells us specifically to do it. You cited, that's one of my favorite verses when the guy asked him, like, Lord, how did we not take care of you? And he says, those who are the lowest among you, if you didn't take care of them, then you didn't take care of me. Who are the lowest among us, Wick? Who are the absolute lowest among us that can't defend themselves? Go.
Hold on. He mentions
you know the answer.
The poor.
The poor are the lowest,
hungry, the sick, those in prison. He doesn't say babies.
It doesn't matter. The babies are the most innocent.
So
they're the ones that need the most protection.
It does not matter what he said? What he actually said,
not the words you're putting in his mouth. Cited that because it's obvious. I'm not saying it does. Don't equivocate.
The words he actually used. I got it up here right now.
That's not what I'm saying. This needs to be clear. I'm not saying it doesn't matter what Jesus said. I'm saying it doesn't matter that he didn't specifically put that in there because it's obvious if you're actually a Christian that we need to take care of babies first before in the Titanic sank. Who got in the lifeboats, Wick? Were you going to jump in there and be like, oh, me first? I'm an adult male. Were you going to do that? Would you have done that?
In a lifeboat?
I'm talking about when the Titanic sank. Who gets in the lifeboat first?
Traditionally, women and children.
Who's running across our borders?
Refugees.
Women and children, or mostly military-age men? So I'm saying, yes, we're going to take care of those babies first, 100%. And that's why the benefit isn't there for Christians, man. It just isn't.
So are you saying that because the refugee, the stranger, is a military-aged man, there is some exception to God's commandment here?
No, I'm saying...
Then why do you keep bringing that up?
You're not understanding.
Why do you keep bringing up that they're military-aged men when you acknowledge that their identity as military-aged men has no bearing on what we're commanded to do?
It does. Because if you're talking about the Christian value system, how does Democrats funding anything that they fund, right? Abortion help, like how does that help Christian values? How is that better than Christians giving to causes they want instead? How is that better, Wick? That is my question that I keep asking you that you won't answer. How is that better?
You can give that money to charities. You know what? You guys fucking don't, right? When it comes to actually caring for the sick
Christians
and the needy,
invented charity, bro.
when
Before
we give
Christians,
it
people
to
stepped over
actually,
people
hold
in
on,
the
you gotta let
street.
me answer your question.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go
When
ahead.
when you actually look at which party's policies are actually going to help the poor and the needy, the sick and the afflicted, those who are hungered, those who are thirsty, the strangers, across the board, Democratic policy does that. You keep trying to sneak in this thing where because it's a man who's military aged, suddenly the rules don't apply or shouldn't apply at the same point. And this is just fundamentally an unchristian thing to say, right?
No,
just
what
because
you're
someone is a young man
fundamentally-
who's 20 to 40 years old does not give them any less access, or should not, it does not excuse us from taking care of them. There was a question that was
It
asked
doesn't.
of Christ
In
when
fact,
he
it-
said these things. Let me finish.
Okay.
When there was a question asked of Christ, when the Pharisee who asked him, like, what are the two great commandments? He was trying to get a gotcha, right? And he asked him, like, what are the two great commandments? He said, love the Lord thy God, love thy neighbor. So he tried to be smug, and he's like, well, who's my neighbor? Christ didn't cite a story about a baby or someone's family. He cited a story about a man who was on his way to Jerusalem, who was accosted by bandits, who was beaten the shit out of, and he was broken and sick. A priest passed him by, but he had other things to do. You know, he had his parish to take care of, his temple to take care of, his synagogue. Then some other guy, some merchant guy passed him by, but, you know, he didn't have time for that because he had a family that he had to look after. No, it was a stranger that came up to that military-aged man, okay, and helped him out, paid for his room and board until he got better. And again, it was someone that at the time, Jews and the Samaritans were not exactly on great terms. They were kind of they kind of hated each other, or at least the Jews hated the Samaritans. And this is the example he gave. Why do you think he said this example and he didn't mention someone's family or a baby? Why? Why do you think he used that example?
Wick, you just totally pivoted away from my question to ask me a different question. I need an answer to this first, man. I need to know, like, you can pivot away. And you even tried to say, before I forget, that Christians don't give to charity. Christians give the most to charity. We could fact check that.
No, this charity isn't effective.
Christians give the most to charity. And you try to say Christians don't give to charity.
No, they don't help the
how
poor.
Does funding
There's a difference.
Hold
on, there's a difference.
Wick? How does it help us? That's what I'm asking. What's the benefit to Christians?
Because it makes you more Christ-like, bro. It makes you more Christ-like. You're giving to charities that aren't getting things done. They're not.
I think that fundamental misunderstanding is that's it, dude. You just said funding abortion makes us more Christ-like.
That's not what I said.
You run it back.
Healthcare for women makes us more
because you equivocate on the terms. I'm not talking about healthcare. I mean, again, you won't just specifically look at the point that I'm bringing up, which is how does funding these things with Christian money help Christians? That is the question that needs to be answered.
I keep answering it in several different ways.
No, you don't. You keep pivoting.
You just
pivoted back to a long story about your neighbor.
Save millions of lives. This goes to access to healthcare for women, which saves lives. This access helps women decide to keep their babies, man. It saves babies' lives. Why are you against
trying to do is help?
Why do you want them to die?
Democrats under Joe Biden are arresting Democrats that want Democrats under Joe Biden were arresting Christians that were praying outside clinics. So no, you're not trying to save lives. You're trying to actively stop Christians for praying for those people and take their money and make them pay for it. And you're going to try to sit here and make the case after 82% of conservatives identify as Christians that Christians are all just making the wrong choice. They don't deserve the individual freedom. We should pay for all the things that we think are morally morally repugnant, and that's your whole argument here, dude.
My whole argument is that self-identifying as a Christian doesn't make you a Christian. You are literally taking the Lord's name in vain when people do that, but do not follow the words of Christ and the teachings of Christ and what he has actually commanded us to do. Deeds, not words, at the end of the day. What is the actual effect? Just because our intent is good does not matter. It's what is actually working, what is actually saving lives, what is actually helping the poor, the needy, all the people that we were called to help and to protect. What is actually effective in doing this? Look, not
Yeah, I
every
think I've
government
demonstrated
program is
that.
effective. I will just grant that. Not every government program works, and it's fine. I think good even to say, hey, this program hasn't met our expectations. It hasn't done what we wanted it to do. We should maybe relook at either restructuring it or getting rid of it in certain cases because it's not doing what we need it to do. But when we talk about what will bring us closer to God, what will make us more Christ-like, what will help us to actually fulfill the words of Christ, I think it's very clear. The Democratic Party policy has at least an attempt to do these things, and it's not perfect. And there are things I disagree with it, right? There are things that I don't like about these things. But again, when you compare it to MAGA, and I want to be clear, MAGA, who specifically rejects God's command to care for the poor and needy, to specifically
Not the
reject
needy.
God's command
Who's
to
the most
accept
needy,
and take
Wick?
in the stranger, right?
Yeah.
Again, you cannot serve God and mammon. Christ drove the money changers from the temple. Donald Trump put his name on a $60 Bible, marketed during Holy Week, combining scripture with American political documents and licensing his name and likeness for the product. He says, "Make America Pray Again" is what they called it. But
Wick,
again,
Democrat policy is to fund and codify abortion as a right. MAGA rolled it
healthcare
back.
to women
They
as a right.
rolled back Roe v. Wade. Like, you
And what
can't make it-
happened? Did more babies die? Yes.
Do you have something that you could cite for that? I'm not saying there wasn't an uptick, but we would have to look at what the actual cause is. Like, you're just citing something and saying there's no possible way that a party whose core platform is that this is a right and pushes this as their core platform, a party core value. There's no way that is more beneficial to Christians than the opposite. And I reject the fact that they even went up. I think that you're just making that up, or you're specifically lying. So if we could get a fact check.
If I can cite you a statistic where it did go up, would you concede the argument?
I'm not going to concede the entire argument because it's not relevant. Only one party platform is trying to actively stop them. And you're arresting the people that are trying to stop them, Wick. You must understand that. And that's not the only thing I'm citing. I'm showing you how Republicans want to get this stuff back in schools. The very stuff that you're quoting, you want to keep out of schools. Like the values and scriptures that you're quoting. Only the right is trying to put them back in. So this is the benefit to Christians. Maybe in your opinion, not to society.
Scripture in schools never left. People were always free to read scriptures if they wished.
Not the point.
In school, you can do it. What was removed was government being able to mandate it, that forces a child to, again, against perhaps the wishes of their parents, read something of a scriptural nature. Again, would you be comfortable or okay with giving the government power to mandate the Quran be read in schools?
No, it doesn't even prove anything.
So
I'm a Christian, so I would be okay with it because I want them to, because I want the government to promote the truth. Again, I bring you back to a fundamental difference in the parties, like the epistemological difference that the right is grounded in objective, true reality. So I want them to promote what I believe is true. And that's why the debate is about Christianity. What is the benefit to Christianity? So I don't care about Islam or if they promote that in school. It makes no difference to the prompt or this debate.
Of course it does, because
as a Christian, it's a benefit to Christians if we promote Christianity in schools.
Okay. But if you give the government a tool in order to have them be able to mandate religion, what's going to happen is people will get into government that do not agree with your religion and have a religion all their own that you find reprehensible. It is better for Christians to not give the government that power. You were just complaining about Biden arresting people, even though you kind of misrepresented it. Do you think it would be wise to let the government, which is probably going to be taken over, right, by people you don't like in 2026 and 2028, do you think it's wise to give the government that power? I think you're silly if you think so. The benefit to Christians,
to promote Christian values anywhere we can. And support the politicians that promote those values, not actively try to stop them. That's what
But
I
you
think.
aren't.
And I already
You aren't
demonstrated for you
trying
when
to
I
put
asked you the questions from
Christianity in
your
school.
own worldview.
You're
Who would
trying
you
to
support?
virtue signal.
No, I asked you from your own worldview, Wick. Who would you support if Christians came to you as a Democrat leader and said, "We don't want to have this pride parade. It's against our. To us, pride is a
I'd
sin."
tell them, then don't
You
go to the pride
conceded that
parade.
you would let them do the parade. You would side
Yes,
against the
don't
Christians.
go.
Do you think that the
If someone
Republicans would
came
side
and
against
said,
the
"I have a
Christians?
problem with what this person is saying," you know what I'd tell them? Don't listen.
Not relevant to the prompt.
Yes, it
The prompt
is.
is which party benefits Christians? Do you think that Republicans would side with the Christians? Who's more likely to side with the Christians in that scenario?
First of all, if you're
It's not
going
even
on
abortion. It's a
trying to
whole other scenario.
shut down someone's free speech, I don't know if you're acting in a Christ-like manner.
Not my question. Which
I'm
party
answering
is
your
going to
question. Do you not
side with
understand
the
the answer here?
Christians to allow them to have their own moral benefit, the one that's promoted, and not have to have pride parades marching down the street, which is a sin to Christians? That's what I'm asking. Which part, and you know the answer, that's why you won't answer. Which party would actively agree with the Christians, the Democrats or
Okay.
Republicans?
Once again,
Can you just
I
answer?
think it is unchristian to try to force one person, to force someone not to have a pride parade. I think that's unchristian.
It's not the
Christian
question.
thing to do is to, again, say, hey, if I don't want to go to a pride parade, I'm not going to go to the pride parade. It's not Christian to force, to exercise what's called, and Christ said this, unrighteous dominion, right? And force other people to act under your values. That is
Right, like you
fundamentally
shouldn't
unchristian.
compulsory.
It is
You shouldn't take their
protecting
tax money
Christians
and
from
put it where you
themselves.
want. Wait, what did you just say? You shouldn't force them to act under your values. Like you shouldn't take
Unrighteous
their tax
dominion.
money and use it for things antithetical to their values. Like
Guess who gets to
exactly what you're trying to
choose?
do. Which of us is trying to say let the Christians choose for themselves, and which of them is trying to force compulsory?
See, that's the thing. You want to
It's
force
you.
everyone to go with your brand of Christianity.
No, this is mainstream Christianity.
A lot of Christians go to Pride Parade.
No, this is mainstream
You don't think
Christianity that
so?
we're talking. Listen, Wick, you've already demonstrated that your party is not going to side with the Christians. I can't get you to answer which party will, but
Which
you're,
Christian?
huh?
Which Christian?
And your whole point here is like you think you know better what the benefit to Christians is. You
I
keep telling
think
us, well, this
Christ
would be a
knows
benefit,
better, and I'm citing him. It's funny how in
right?
this
In a
argument that
reductive
you're
way,
making,
you
and
can't just cite
you're
one.
citing
It's completely
Republicans,
reductive.
and I'm citing Christ. You understand the difference here? You see the juxtaposition,
Yeah,
right?
you see
Where
how
you
that's
say,
reductive?
well, we know better. That's the position you're taking right now. That modern Christianity, evangelical Catholic Christianity knows better than Jesus Christ on what Christianity is.
No, that's
the fundamental position you are taking, whether
that's
you
a non sequitur. You
see
can't
to it or not.
infer that
It's
from
not a
that.
non sequitur.
It
If
is.
we're
You
talking
can't-
about what best leads people to Christ, I would side with the word of Christ over the Ecumenical Council of 356 or what my pastor on Twitter said.
No, but how about just
100
letting them
out of
teach it in schools? What best leads people to Christ? Letting them read about it or not letting them read about it? Go.
You
Which
can
one?
read the words of Christ in school today, right
I'm
now.
saying
No
as
one is
part of the
stopping you.
curriculum, which one would benefit which
I
ones
don't
would lead
trust
people to Christ
teachers
more?
to
But you
teach-
said who
I don't trust
leads
a
people
government
to
teacher
Christ
to teach
more?
the
I'm
words of
using
Christ.
your
I
words.
don't.
I'm using your words. You said which leads people to Christ more. So from that position, which does actually lead people to Christ more? The ones that's arresting Christians for praying and funding things that are antithetical to their views and stopping their positions from getting read in schools, or the ones that advocate for their positions to be read in schools?
Sure, let me just
Which
ask
one,
you.
Wick? Can you just answer the question honestly?
Okay, yes.
Which party is better for those benefits to Christians?
Democrats. Because you aren't asking for the words of Christ to be read in schools, because that's already a thing. That's something you can do now. You want something fundamentally different, right? You want something
I'm saying
that the
we
government
want-
is mandated, right? Mandated to teach the words of God. I do not trust the government to teach the words of God correctly. And it's crazy that you do. When we talk about who's worse, right? Arresting people who are praying, even though that's not what happened. They were obstructing. Did you know that the Trump's ICE shot a pastor in the fucking face with a non-lethal round? Do you think that's worse than being arrested? I do.
Do I think getting shot in the face? Well, what did he do? First of all, like his just being a pastor doesn't mean.
Now we're asking what he did. He was
No,
protesting.
Wick,
for
you're
this
missing the
stranger.
entire point the entire
following the
time.
words of
You
God.
said
He
which
was
party brings us
advocating
closer to Christ.
for
That's what
the
you asked.
refugee.
And now, once again, you're pivoting away from your own question because you see where it actually leads you. Which party does actually bring us closer to Christ? So you're pivoting to some Christian that got shot with a non-lethal round
He's not a
that I don't know
Christian,
anything
he's a
about. What does that have to
minister.
do with the debate topic? Try to stay on topic. You don't want to answer any of the questions because you
I'm
know
a
what the
minister.
actual inference is to these questions. The actual inference, the logical inference
your
is
questions
Democrats
are
want to get
false.
rid of Christianity anywhere they can, and Republicans want to promote it. That's the logical inference. If you know that we're going to come to, if you answer my
But
question.
you don't know enough about scripture to know who's promoting it or not. You misquoted Christ himself when you talked
I
about,
didn't misquote him.
you
I
have to
said I
love
was
the
talking
family.
about the
You
Catechism
did
and
that.
Thomas
I do not
Aquinas.
trust you
You're
to
giving a
know who is
reductive position
better
of
for
Christianity.
Christ, right? For Christianity, when you can't cite the words of Christ correctly. And you act like I'm dodging. I'm answering your question,
You haven't
much
answered
like
it one
Christ
single
did with
time. You
other
haven't answered
questions,
my main question,
parables.
which is
You
why
asked me,
should Christians.
I asked you, asked me directly, who's better for Christianity in schools? Democrats, because they don't mandate religion and they don't
So
teach false
removing
teachings.
Christianity from
They
schools is
allow
better for
the individual to
Christianity?
come to know God through Christ and not the government. Do you think it's probably going to create some perverse incentives by having the government mandated to teach Christianity in schools? Which version of
No.
Christianity do you think is going to be taught?
I don't think that. I don't think it's going to call not any more than what we have now, which is the promotion of degeneracy. Like if we could replace the books that Christians don't think should be there with Christian text, yeah, that would be much better. Which party would let us do that? Which party would let us replace the LGBT books in the library with Christian books? Which one?
You can
Please
add
answer.
Christian books
Please
right
answer.
now in a library. You
Please
can do that
answer.
now.
Which party will let us take those books out and replace those? But it doesn't matter if they already
Which
have some.
book
That's
do you
not the
want
question.
banned?
Not the question. I'm saying if Christians wanted a book taken out that was, let's say, LGBT referenced, which party would let us do that? Which party would fight us on it? Just be honest, man.
Oh, again, do you think it makes
Just be
someone
honest.
more or less Christ-like when they advocate to take a book out of a library that they don't like?
So guys, you see, he won't answer any time I ask
Do you
which
understand
party.
why I'm asking you this
Which party
question?
would support this? He won't answer any
Do you
time.
understand why I'm
because
asking you
every
this
time
question?
the answer is the Republicans would support it and the Democrats would actively fight it. So all you're doing is dodging and ducking away from answering the specific question. And my main question, which you still never answered, which is why should Christians vote for a party that wants to take their money, impede their ability to give to charity by giving them less funds to use themselves, and force them to pay for things that are antithetical to their morals, like abortion, when they're actively signing into law new measures that legalize it up to the moment of birth? That is my main question. If you can't answer that, Wick, I don't know what to tell you.
Because what you're doing is you're smuggling a lot of things that just aren't true into the question. It's like, why would I vote for someone who, why would I
Which
support?
part?
Look, I'll give you an example. This is the type of question you're asking me. Why would I support DragonFisttv, who rapes children, right? Why would I do that when I could support Admiral Gibbs, who is a saint and loves all his loves puppies? You understand how? And
That's
then
what you're
when you
doing.
refuse to answer that, and
That's
then
what
I get
you're
mad at
doing.
you for not answering that because
Wick,
you're like,
that's what
wow,
you're
that's a
doing.
crazy question. That's what you're doing. You're
That's what
smuggling
you're
in
doing.
things that are just not true and then getting mad when I won't deal with your question that is fundamentally just not true. It is
Who's
just
mad?
not true that
Wick.
you are being somehow negatively impeded by the government because you have to pay taxes. And sometimes the taxes goes to things that you don't like. You are still able to
Straw
give
man.
to charity. You are still
Straw man.
able to help the poor and the needy. And in fact, I would argue that the government having more funds allows them, at least hypothetically, to care for more people, and that is much more Christ-like. It
No, it
helps the
isn't.
poor more. It helps the
No.
needy more. it is more effective at the end of the day in stopping abortion. These are
I've
the
already
things. You want to
demonstrated.
sound good. I want to do good.
Yeah, I've already demonstrated that the government taxing you and compulsory funds going to other groups to help them is not Christian charity. That is not charity. And I've already shown you how that
I
actually
don't
impedes Christians'
disagree
ability
that it's
to
not
give to
charity.
charity. We talked about the churches all over the network of churches around the world and how we could easily use that network to give to charity ourselves. That's my main question: is why should we give to the government to do these things? That's the main point I'm trying to get out of you. And you said I was smuggling
give
stuff
to
in
both.
line, but you didn't say one thing that was a lie or that I smuggled in. Not one. What did I say that wasn't
That
true?
there's a false choice. It's a dichotomy that I have to choose in general between giving
That's
to
the
the government
prompt.
through taxes or giving to charity. I can do both, and I do.
We have to choose. Well, first of all, if you have less money, Wick, do you have less ability to give to charity?
Yes, but the government has more ability to help the poor and needy.
Okay, not my
Who can
question.
help
We're
the
talking
poor and
about
needy more?
Christians.
Me or the government?
Say that again.
Who can help the poor and needy more? Me or the government?
Well, currently, under this current system, because we give all the money to the government to do that, they currently have those funds and earmark them for what they call helping people. Whether or not that
You
actually,
mean like
no
giving
laws,
malaria
no,
nets in
neither
Africa to
party,
keep
Wick,
people
is
from
going to
getting
come out with
malaria?
a law. Neither party is going to come
Or
out with a
scare
law or a
kids?
policy that's called "fuck you." Neither party is going to do that. They're all going to have law. They're all going to have names that seem like they're helpful. Right? So we can't go just based off the name. Like you said, we have to look at the merits of what's actually happening. And that's why every time I ask you in this situation between Christians and secular ideology, who will the left choose? You never answer because you know that the answer is the left is not going to side
Because
with the
when
Christians.
you keep making these hypotheticals, your hypothetical is that this group of Christians want to force their ideology on another group.
Well, hold on.
And
No.
I reject that allowing that to happen brings you closer to Christ. I would
Actually,
argue
no.
that allowing Christians to sin like that makes it harder for them to get to Christ.
I just want to replace what the left is already promoting. They're last point. They're already doing parades, so that should be a Christian parade instead of a pride parade. They already have these
No one's
books in
stopping
the
you from having
library,
a
so that
Christian
should be
parade.
Christian books instead of LGBT books. And again, I ask you, which party is more likely to help me facilitate that way? Just be honest.
Hold on. I want to ask a question though, because Rick has brought up.
Go ahead, ask a
question. So here's my issue. Kind of, I'm a little confused, just because I am a minister as well.
Sure.
You know, Southern Baptist. So I kind of like a little bit confused here. Real quick. Like, it seems like you're admitting just like all of Revelation. Like, there's a reason why the pearly city on the hill is going to have like walls. There's like Jesus the conqueror. You know, they talk about Christians not taking the mark of the beast. Like, what you're asking, it seems like to me a little bit. Two people like Dragonfist. I think that's kind of what Dragonfist is trying to reiterate, is that he's worried that you're basically going to force the mark of the beast on them. And like, he doesn't seem like he's a doomsday Christian. He's like, yay, that's a good thing. Bring the apocalypse. He's like, why would us as Christians want to spread our love and then be forced to have to take, I don't know, the mark of the beast? Like, what do you have to say to something like that?
I'm going to come out unequivocally against the government or leftists or Democrats or anyone forcing you to take the mark of the beast. I am against that. That is bad. Likewise, I am against, and to be clear, so is Jesus Christ, mandating my religion or anyone's religion on a group of people. If you want to live your religion, I encourage you to do so, but do not try to force that on other people. And these are the problems I'm having with all of Dragonfist's hypotheticals. They aren't situations where Christians are being prevented from finding God. They are situations and hypotheticals where Christians are trying to force other people to either do something that the other people do not want to do or not do something that the other people want to do. Allow people to decide for themselves and allow Christ to do his work.
Like the 82% of Christians that identify as conservatives, should they be able to decide for themselves?
Yes, they can.
Okay, so then debate over. Like they've
decided. Why do you think
they've decided which party benefits them? They've decided with
Israel.
You just granted that they're allowed to decide for themselves.
Again, the whole of Scripture, like almost all of it, especially the Old Testament, is the people of God, people who identified as Jewish or later Christians, doing things that cause God to cut them off, right? Or they cut themselves off from God. So a bunch of people who call themselves Christians making a choice does not mean that choice is good. There's a scripture that I want to read from, I think it was
But
Romans.
again, that's not like you're not exactly answering the point that I made, which is you said they should be able to choose for themselves. That's why I said, like the 82% of Christians, yeah, they should be able to choose for themselves. Same thing, like you were equivocating from the point on the Bible in schools, saying, oh, well, you want to push this religion on other people. No, you said, which party brings you closer to Christ? To which I replied, taking Christian teachings out of schools can't be getting you closer than the party that wants to put them in. So I'm just giving you responses to your own points. These aren't my arguments. I'm giving you responses to your arguments, and then you're turning it back on me like it's the fundamental premise that I'm going with here. Again, I'll ask you the question of why should we pay things? This is what Gibbs was trying to point to. He used the mark of the beast, but it could be anything. Why should we pay for things that we don't think is a benefit to us? What do we care what Wick thinks is a benefit to us? Why, like, what is the benefit? Like, why should we go on Wick's benefit? That's my question.
It's not my benefit. It's your benefit. It's
so what's the benefit?
Christ's benefit. It's the poor benefit. Because again, Christ commands it. Christ commands you to do these things. Again, I'm just
to support abortion.
Bear with me. Okay.
That's what he commands us.
He commands you not to exercise unrighteous dominion, to care for the poor, for the needy. You are acting like abortion is most needy. You are using these babies as a shield to
not a shield. It's true.
Like hurting millions of people, man.
You're
using these babies as a human shield.
A third of Gen Z already. It's true. We're trying to
justify the mistreatment, the failure to care for the poor, the failure to take in the stranger, the failure to help the sick and afflicted, and you're using this as a human shield. It does not do this, right? This idea that you can and should advocate that people don't get abortion. That's something you can do right now. That's something
which party is going to get me closer to that goal
as a Christian.
Which party?
That said, having access to women's health care, having access if something goes wrong and an abortion is necessary for the health of the mother, I want that to be available even up to the day of birth. Yes, I do. Right? That is, again, caring for the less fortunate, people who can't and couldn't go and get the care they needed beforehand. So there's a complication with the birth. And now, unfortunately, we're in a situation where they have to. They have to.
You just conceded it, right? Wick. You just said, yeah, you
want
it up until the moment of birth. So which party is more aligned with the Christian values?
You aren't listening. Do you think it's a Christian value to stop a woman who will die if they don't get an abortion?
No. You don't know anything about Christian teaching. Actually, under Catholicism,
is it a Christian value to stop a woman who will die if they don't get an abortion? Is it a Christian value to stop?
This is the whole point about this whole debate. You don't
is that a Christian value? Yes or no?
No, actually, Catholic teaching under certain circumstances doesn't consider that an abortion. They don't consider that an abortion. So no, in that circumstance, we're talking about two different things. You should look up the Catholic teaching on this specific example.
Why?
But that's not 60 million babies.
Why would I look up
6 million Jews in the Holocaust? 60 million babies. 60 million since this started. So yes, that's who we're sticking up for, Wick. You keep using the wording.
Once they get born, you say, well,
Christ said we need to take care of the needy. Who is more
little older,
needy
you
than
say
someone who
military
can't take
age
care of
men.
themselves?
You don't care about life, man.
You don't care about life. You said, oh, we need to take care of the needy. And I'm asking you,
I
who's
didn't
more
say
needy
that.
than those who
Christ
can't take care of
said that.
themselves?
I didn't say that. Christ said that. I'm going to read you a scripture, okay,
man? Who is more
because
needy than someone who can't take care of themselves? That is the most needy, Wick. They literally need
There's not a ranking system here. There's not a fucking ranking system. He didn't use Christ when he gave the example. He didn't use a baby. He used a military age
argument
man.
Of Christianity.
This
That's
idea
one
that
verse,
again, up until they're born, then fuck them, right? Up until they're born, right? That these people have more of our care than someone who actually is alive right now and is hungry right now and who needs help right now.
You don't do
It's
that either.
using babies as a human shield.
You don't help
You
those
are
people either.
thrusting
Democrats
them
are soft on
into
crime. They let
excuse
criminals back
the
out. They invite
fact
criminals into
that
the
you
country.
just
You don't
do
do that
not
either. I'm just saying
fulfill the
this is the main
requirement
point. This
given
is
by
the main.
Scripture. You're doing like they did in Romans. Paul, again, they wrote a whole letter. I think it was Peter, wrote a whole letter to the Romans. It might have been Paul. Wrote a whole letter to the Romans and saying, hey, if you call yourself a Jew, if you rely on the law and boast in God, if you know his will and approve of what is superior because you're instructed by the law, if you're convinced that you are a guide for the blind, a light for those in the dark, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of little children, because you have in the law and body of knowledge and truth, you then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? You who preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say that people should not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, do you dishonor God by breaking the law? As it is written, God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, because you are not living to the things that you claim to do. You are saying, well, I care about life, while not caring about life. You're saying, well, I don't think we should steal because taxes. And then you support someone who's taking billions of dollars or trying to take billions of dollars of my tax money for his fucking lawsuits. You're again, oh, I abhor adultery, and you're supporting people like Tim Paxton, Paxton, who again spent the 4th of July with his mistress in England. You support someone like Trump, who's fucking all sorts of like people outside of the bonds of matrimony and marriage, right? This is why Christianity is on a decline and people don't understand what it means to be Christian, because you are not living Christian values when you use babies as a shield to stop you from fulfilling the second greatest commandment of all, to love your neighbor as yourself.
Moderator, he's just prattling on and on. It has nothing to do with the prompt.
Don't say moderator after I say 10 seconds. Like, come on, brother.
Yeah. I was going to say it anyway. I wasn't listening to you. I'm sorry. I was going to say it anyway. All right, relax.
All right, you got
Intense here.
Go ahead.
Ed, what did you say? I didn't hear you.
I just said 10 seconds, and then you started bitching right after I said 10 seconds, my son.
Yeah, because he's just prattling on and on. He's not making any sense. It has nothing to do. That's why I keep asking him which party would support Christians. He won't answer any of my questions. Which party would support Christians in this scenario, this scenario, this scenario? Every time he doesn't answer, he knows the answer.
Yeah, I was going to let you go on for as long as he went. Don't worry. This will be fair. But here's the issue. If you ask somebody a question, they have to act like this is not your first debate. Come on, bro. You know, if you ask a question, they have to answer. Like, go on. And now you.
I don't think he was answering it.
All right, go ahead.
I think he was prattling on and on. I don't think he was answering the question.
Go ahead. Now it's your turn. Go ahead. It's not my first time.
Okay. The reason I said that is because I don't think he was talking towards the prompt at all in what he was saying. I think these are points that we already addressed that he just keeps pivoting back to. But the prompt is, which party benefits Christians more? And every time he tries to say which one makes you more Christ-like or which one gets you closer to Christ, I try to show that one party is actively arresting Christians praying and one party is actively trying to get Christian books and 10 Commandments and Scripture back into classrooms. There's no debate here as which party is doing that. He just won't answer the question because he knows that answering that question loses him the debate. So he's making, and that's why I said in the very beginning, he's making up some false benefit that he thinks is the ultimate benefit of Christianity, while also saying that people should be able to choose for themselves and what the benefits are. So that's why I'm saying it's not answering my questions on the prompt or towards that prompt in any way to keep going back to this point that I've already went over with him several times. If he could answer my questions, I think that would be a better way of looking at what the actual prompt is, which is which party would support Christians in these various scenarios. And we know the answer.
Is my turn?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So what does this have to do with the prompt? Let me address that first. You keep claiming that what I'm saying doesn't have anything to do with the prompt. Once again, I think, and I think you agree with me, becoming more Christ-like is a benefit to Christians, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So policies, positions, examples who are more Christ-like will help Christians become closer to Christ, correct?
Yes.
policies, positions, and behavior that are less Christ-like will get you further from Christ, correct?
Yes.
So my
We've been
argument, given Christ's words, not what some ecumenical council in 324 decided, not what someone in 1500 wrote on a thesis and nailed to a church door, not what someone who claims 84% of Republicans think this, right? And Christian Republicans think this. No, but what Christ commands us to do, what he, who I think knows better than you or I, says, these are the things you need to do in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? The party that facilitates that better and has better examples of people behaving like that is obviously going to be the party that benefits American Christians more. Do you follow me so far?
Yeah, but I already addressed
so
this.
the argument again is that Democrats are the only party that are taking into account the needs of the stranger, right? An immigration party. They are the ones who are caring for the sick through the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and other such programs that are seeking Medicare for people who just don't have the proper insurance, affordable health care, all these things. These are things that Democrats are advocating for, and Republicans, in many cases, are advocating against. And immigration, I think, is the strongest example here, right? The way that our government has treated the refugees, right? The immigrant is fundamentally unchristian.
Okay, so again, I'm just going to address this one more time because you brought up again the government's responsibility to help people has nothing to do with Christian charity. We've already addressed this. Again, if anything, it stops Christians from actively giving to the charity that they find to be the benefit. So you're choosing the charitable cause, giving it to the government. You're actually saying Christians should be more Christ-like by allowing the government to give to whoever they want. That has nothing to do with Christians being more Christ-like. That's allowing the government to give to causes that they believe to be more beneficial, I guess you're saying, to your neighbors. But that has nothing to do with actually Christians being more Christ-like, letting the government delineate the funds. It actually takes away from Christians being able to make that personal sacrifice. I talked about this already, that personal sacrifice of giving. That's what builds the virtue for Christians. You're actively stopping them from doing that. That's the problem with your whole argument, is you're stopping Christians from doing that while deciding where the money should go and who we should help. So who you're at, the benefit is to, sure, the benefit that you're citing is to the poor people and to the immigrants and to the people that need help, not to the Christians. That's who you're citing benefits for. And I understand you're making a connection with the golden rule or however you're trying to make it. But again, I point to the fact that if you're forcing if you're taking away their ability to do charity and you're stopping them from implementing their ideology wherever they can, and actively siding with marginalized groups instead of Christians, arresting Christians that are praying and protesting while taking their money and making them fund abortion, Wick, you have simply lost the debate, sir.
I'll let the audience decide that.
Yeah,
so first of all, a lot of what you said is
maybe
just
we can
not
move
true.
to closings because
Right?
I think we've been through this.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well, let me
Go ahead, Wait, you go first.
let me respond to that, and then we can get to closings.
Sure.
That's cool. So a lot of you said was just not true. Like this false dichotomy that by paying taxes, somehow that absolves you or keeps you, I should say, from engaging in personal charity is just not true, right? People have lived under far harsher tax burdens than the ones we have in America. And yet they're still able to give. They're still able to help. You don't need to give money specifically to help someone, for example. It doesn't cost me a dime to take someone off the street, right? Help them, get them warm, right? Feed them if I have food in my pocket, right? Food, like maybe I get some McDonald's, I can share one of my burgers with them or something like that. None of that is stopped because of a tax policy. My argument fundamentally is that leadership matters. People can choose, and Christians should choose, elected representatives that are going to do these things because that matters. You don't get absolved because the government does something, right? But it helps when you advocate, and we're commanded to do this, it's commanded in Proverbs, Psalms, etc., to advocate that the government help the poor and the needy and etc., right? Take in the stranger. These things are commandments. They're not suggestions. He didn't stutter, right? I can read you the verses if you like, but you haven't listened. You just tune out when I do this. So
I
I'm
addressed
just going
this
to try to do it
specifically.
as quickly as I can, right? Like, once again, you present a bunch of false choices, false dichotomy, and then you ask, like, well, why don't you let the Christians sin? Well, I'm going to stop the Christians from sinning if I can. Okay.
All right. Is that? Do you want to respond and then do closings?
I can
Is that good?
Yeah,
respond in my
respond and do
closing.
closings, or
All
you can
right,
go
I can
closings if
respond
you
real
want.
quick. Just to respond for the last time to that, I went over this like 1,000 times. Yes, we are supposed to help the needy. There's no one more needy than those who can't defend themselves or take care of themselves. This is the most needy. So that's what we're trying to do in our way. Once again, Wick thinks that he knows better and he should be the ultimate arbiter of what the benefit is to Christians, even though he's pointing to benefits everywhere else except for Christians. And that is the core problem here and why Democrats aren't the right move for Christians, which I'll go over one more time in my closing.
All right. Well, before we go to closes, I want to say I know I've done a decent job monitoring when both the contestants' chats hate you thinking you're biased. So I know I've done good and fair at that point. So that's what I really like to see. All right. And on that note, Wick, go ahead and take us away with your closing. I guess we'll give you like 4 minutes here or something.
Sure. It's always interesting to have these debates and to realize that people just don't know the words of Christ. They just fundamentally don't. And we saw this during the debate, where again, my opponent here misquoted Christ, probably not on purpose. I'm going to give him that grace, and said that again, the second greatest commandment was to love your family. It just wasn't. Christ doesn't mention all these things, right? He talks about, in fact, how people should abandon their mother and their father and cleave to him, right? He should abandon their brothers and sisters and cleave to him, right? Familial connections are something that he just, again, didn't really talk that much on. There's a couple here and there, right? When we talk about, like, does the government doing a thing make it better, or like, is the government exempt from the rules of God? I don't think so. Is the government, which is made up of individuals, is made up of people, are they exempt from following God's commandments? I say no. Does the government, right, can it aid you in being more Christ-like? I think it can, culturally. Should it mandate you be more Christ-like? No. And Christ agrees with me here. His king, and he quote, it's a pretty famous quote, "My kingdom is not of this world." He rejected politics. He rejected political power. He rejected kingship. When they tried to make him a king, he escaped from them, right? He fundamentally rejected all that. I think at the end of the day, what we should do is what Christ commanded us to do. Help the poor, help the sick, visit the imprisoned, visit the afflicted, let in the stranger, take in and treat him like he was born among you, I believe is what Leviticus commands us to. It might be Deuteronomy, I forget. At the end, like, these are not suggestions, they're commandments, but we make all these excuses and we pretend, right, that the Bible is hard to understand or that it's complicated. 95% of the Bible is very clear. It's very easy to understand. We just pretend it's harder to understand so we can make excuses for why we don't follow it. It bothers me fundamentally what the evangelical right, what the Orthodox right, what the orthobros have done to Christ and his words. They've perverted it. They've turned him into a whore for political power. And they are trying to convince you that empathy for your fellow man is somehow a bad trait. They want you to harden your heart against, right, helping quote unquote military aged men by trying to paint them as a threat. You should be wise, but your goal should be to help people. And we can disagree on how to do that, but I think, again, the only party in American politics currently who is trying their best to implement policies that would help, again, the poor and the needy, etc., is the Democratic Party. And this benefits American Christians because it creates a better culture of Christ-like living. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Thanks so much. And Dragonfish, you got 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't want to just harp on the same points over and over. I do wish I got to ask Wick one thing. I would have asked him when he took this prompt, was he genuinely trying to construct an argument like on substance and biblical reality, or just trying to throw like red meat to your side and troll mine? Because to anyone that understands the foundational tenets of Christianity, even in the slightest degree, arguing that a party built on abortion expansion and modern secularism is more beneficial to the Christian soul, it isn't just a tough sell, it's an unwinnable premise. So I almost thought you were trolling with this prompt. But the audience will decide for themselves as to the outcome of this debate. As every time I tried to ask Wick which party would support the Christians in a number of different scenarios, not just abortion, he never answered because he knew the answer. Thank you.
All right, thank y'all so much for being here and being a part of this. It was a good one.
Yeah.
Y'all have a good rest.
I'm gonna hold on my stream
Okay.
to my stream. We're not ending. We're gonna take calls and things like that because this didn't last as long as I thought it might. But both of you, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you coming. Well, wait, hold on. This is not my show. It's
yeah.
it's Gibbs.
Don't worry.
But no,
Well,
thanks for coming anyway, I guess.
Yeah, we'll
Sorry,
wait
it's just
over there
habit. But we'll switch to my show soon. So if you have thoughts, call into my Discord. I love you guys. Good night.
All right, audio
Hold on.
Travis, you be good as well. Have a good one, guys.
All right, thanks, guys. I'm going to talk to my guys over here too. Thanks. What's up, everybody? That was truly wild. Let me go through these super chats so I can raid with you guys. Go back to the top.